Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Links with Friends. Definitely not the other thing. Today we're doing government and security stories to start
Around
your
technology.
week. Around technology.
Until Friday. Then it's a free-for-all.
Yeah, Friday's always nonsense.
Friday just makes us feel better because the world is so crazy.
And you know, a lot of people will go in the comments and they'll be like, you're too stupid to talk about politics. You don't understand politics, which is just an asinine thing to say anyway, because politics is literally opinion. But politics and technology these days are inseparable because the big tech giants and the big government work hand in hand. And that is no more apparent than here.
New group attacking the iPhone encryption backed by U.S. political dark money network. Oh, surprise, surprise. Who would have guessed? I hate this because this is, the thing that is terrible. We're like, oh, we should have more ideals and we should live up to our ideals. And then it's this.
So this is the HEAT Initiative, a nonprofit child safety advocacy group. And, well, that sounds good, right? But it turns out the money behind them is, what was the name of it? Like Honeywell or Hollywell or
Hopewell.
Hopewell, yeah.
which is a known political billionaire group, much like the Koch brothers on the other side. So this is the Democrat side of the coin. And they are doing this because they don't want encryption.
But also child safety.
Actually, I think it's like 99-1.
We just don't want encryption, but we're going to say it's for the kids.
I love how when all these stories come up, it's always about, but it's like as if good old fashioned police work evaporated. And this is the only thing that will stop just a sea of really messed up people from doing really messed up things. And that's just never really actually reality.
It's also really unusual for Apple to back down from a group like this, especially we see with China and some other things. But they actually have some freedom of information in here of emails that went between the two of Apple very, very carefully pushing back about the scanning. And they're like, I don't think our customers are going to like that whole scanning on the devices against their will thing. Maybe not. And then, of course, the encryption thing came up. And so we can celebrate Apple just a little bit here for standing their ground against a very powerful player.
Do you think there was some Apple marketing person there who had to write that email and they went to ChatGPT and they're like, how do I gently turn them down?
Do you think ChatGPT has a lot of experience dealing with petulant billionaires?
Yeah.
But I fear that this is probably an indicator that someday we will get all of this. We will lose encryption. We'll get scanning on the devices.
Eventually, the way this usually goes in business is they bring a money man in, and the money man just looks at it and is like, well, I'm just going to do the hard decision because we have to, this is for our shareholders and this is the bottom line and we have to do this. And this is a gold mine of personal information we could use to make a whole bunch of money to make the line go up. So we'll just get in there and I'll be the bad guy and we'll do that. And that's just how it goes every time.
Or an activist investor like Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
But Apple is so big that they're actually kind of immune to that.
But more money, though. What if we could be bigger and more rich?
I don't trust Apple to do what they say they're going to do, though, because they have such a history of being very duplicitous with those things, as we'll learn more about in the business section.
And when you are given that kind of power, when you're given surveillance over the entire world, the urge to abuse it is a little bit overwhelming, especially for the kind of people who are already in the game of trying to get as much power as possible. I don't think we can ever trust them to exercise caution.
ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, and even the Secret Service are all illegally using smartphone location data.
I like that you switched the tense there.
Yeah.
Because that's accurate.
This is talking about, there's a court case and the transcript from the judge is, I'm really disturbed here that you all have not cited the legal authority under which you believe that you are acting within the bounds of the law. Because the judge wasn't even saying, oh, you shouldn't do that. It was, okay, you're doing this. What law does this, what law gives you the permission to do this? Because the way the government is supposed to be is they have a charter to do things. And anything they're not allowed to do in the charter, they're not allowed to do. Like, if it doesn't explicitly say you can do this, you can't do that. That's how it worked for 200 years.
Those days are over. They also know, what the sub-headline there that you saw in the corner was, they use it on their coworkers just for fun. Just
Wow.
oh, I know where you were. Because they have it. I mean, of course they're going to use it.
I see you were at the Harvest Festival last weekend.
Another trip to Hardee's, Steve. Really?
Why do you keep going back to the hardware stores? Listen, I got this cast iron plumbing. Every weekend I'm replacing a fitting.
Oh, that's disgusting. And we usually don't find out about these kinds of things until a court case happens or some reporter goes for freedom of information. And that is exactly what we got with Google. But as you'll recall, for the past few weeks, Google has been furiously fighting some of their records coming to light. And they have definitively lost.
The DOJ finally posted what the quote-unquote embarrassing court doc was that Google wanted to hide. I don't even think that's an accurate headline. It's like the DOJ finally posted the document that was already on LexisNexis to stop people from having to log into the pay-for LexisNexis service and get it. And the document is an email. It's actually pretty innocuous, but it reads like Scarface. You know the Scarface movie where he's got like the piles of cocaine on the desk? It's like that, but this executive was piles of money on the desk from ad revenue. And the emails were basically along the lines of, we're doing this better than anybody else. Oh my gosh, this amazing ad revenue. We're going to take over the universe. It's amazing. And that guy had to testify in court. Oh no, that wasn't real. I don't really think that. That was all hyperbole. That was actually for a marketing class that I'm teaching to try to get the students to think. And it's like,
So why are there cigarettes on this thing? It's because that's what he compared it to. So he actually said, and you can go and read it. They linked to it somewhere here.
Or cocaine.
We're going to be demonetized like twice because you said that.
Sorry.
So you can read this. Now he's talking about, so you have the two sides of economic supply and demand. And he pointed out that Google is so in control of the market that they don't have to worry about the customer anymore. Like, we don't care if you have a good search experience. That's not what we're in the business of doing anymore. We sell ads. We only worry about that side of the business because everybody's going to use Google. That's just a given.
That sounds like a monopoly.
So when the money man comes in, how long before Chrome starts injecting ads into your browsing experience? Because that's just what we need to do to make the line go up.
But also, how long until your service starts to really suck?
That's everywhere. Like, there's ads everywhere, all over the internet.
We don't even have to do search anymore. Like, search is kind of a wait. You already own the internet with Chrome. Literally, why does it make money to invest in search if you already own the web with Chrome?
Well, let's be honest. Everyone looks for something and then puts Reddit at the end of it anyway, because half the results on Google are garbage.
But the thing you're using to look at the internet?
But now we know why it's garbage, right?
Yeah.
Because they stopped caring. They're like, hey.
Yeah, whatever. You can just get all your info from, like, this one site.
Yeah. Oh, and last week we learned that the CIA was coming out with a new AI tool, and not to be outdone,
National Security Agency is starting an artificial intelligence security center. So you'll be able to talk to the architect.
You won't.
And ask it things about stuff.
And they're going to also try to manage other AIs that are out there and sort of, I guess, check them for security or whatever. Nothing good's going to happen in that place. Only bad stuff. And for a while, we've had a lot of states who are saying like, oh, if you're under 13, you can't use Facebook, or you're not allowed to go to this site, or TikTok is banned everywhere. Is that freedom of speech? Is that legal? Should it be? The Supreme Court has been treating it like a hot coal. They've just been running away from it. But finally, they will look at it.
The Supreme Court will decide if state laws limiting social media platforms violate the Constitution. From one idiot's perspective, it obviously violates the Constitution because...
Wouldn't that be like your town square?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Or just, personal, like, I'm going to decide to do this terrible thing that doesn't hurt anybody else. Well, that's within your rights.
Or you're not allowed to go to this town square. Only these town squares.
Yeah.
This one's not allowed anymore. Now, TikTok probably is a horrible Chinese spying apparatus, but that should be your choice to make.
It would be better if the Supreme Court spent its time saying that I own my device and I can take whatever precautions I want in order to prevent this application from doing whatever the heck it does for spying and everything else. And by law, the operating system vendors have to give me the stuff that I need to see into what it's doing.
But they don't. Also, if you recall the rise of cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, the powers that be hated it and referred to it as fraud and money laundering up until the point they gained control of it. Now they're cool with it. So anytime that you come up with something new or even use this in a way that they don't approve of, they will go back to that previous era of this must be destroyed.
8-year prison sentence for a New Hampshire man convicted of running an unlicensed Bitcoin business. But, I don't know.
He was probably not vetting his customers. He probably knew that there was some scam stuff going on there. So
There were some unusually large transactions.
yeah, I mean, he was probably up to no good, but so are they.
Again, this is more has happened as a result of this than the HSBC money laundering.
And here's a fun one that, I'm sure this annoyed some people, might have actually hurt some people by, getting their funds frozen or some whatever.
This is a
but
taste of nonsense early.
they did resolve it with a backup, so everything was okay at the end of the day.
Cat accused of wiping U.S. Veteran Affairs server after jumping onto a keyboard.
That cat is a Chinese spy. Oh, look at him. You know who else would do that, Mr. Cricket?
He's black, so he doesn't photograph well. They should have changed the lighting there.
Surely they have other photos of. Maybe they did that to hide his identity.
Protect him from online harassment.
The court case is pending. They're like, well, we can't really let him know who he is.
And we all know that the prices that they're charging us for mobile data is nothing close to what they are actually expending to maintain that mobile data. And that is no more obvious than when we look at other countries and their prices.
Mobile data cost ranking, the U.S. is one of the most expensive countries. Israel has the cheapest data plans. One of the countries worse than the U.S., Zimbabwe. So we really do have third world. A lot of the time in videos, I joke about how awful in third world our mobile networks are. And people always try to correct me in the comments. This one's for you.
So our average cost about $6. Israel's average cost was what, like 16 cents per gigabyte? Zimbabwe up there at $43. But I imagine the people of Zimbabwe are not moving a lot of multimedia. I think they do a lot of stuff still through text and all that.
Yeah.
So they're probably using a lot less data.
I've heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard in a lot of African countries, they use phones almost primarily for all their browsing.
Well, this is the strategy here is like they put in the caps and the prices to get you used to it. It's the boiling frog thing. It's the reason that ISPs set the data caps at a terabyte, because 10 years ago, terabyte seemed generous, but today that's what, like 3 games?
Now they blame this on infrastructure. So for example, Israel's infrastructure is much newer than ours and thus cheaper to run. That's the argument. But there is that whole issue of the fact that we keep giving billions and billions of dollars to upgrade that infrastructure.
We've given $500 billion since 1996, as a matter of fact.
And it just doesn't ever seem to get upgraded.
That's so weird.
And then
Or
they
even
charge us
it doesn't
more money.
even make it to certain places. Like there are some places not far from us right now that don't have internet still.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Israel has way better coverage on the whole. I mean, it is a lot smaller, but still, I feel like we could do better.
It's like, oh, the United States population density is really low. When we ran electricity to every shack, outhouse, and, just the population density was considerably lower. We did the same with telephones. We just need to roll up our sleeves and get it done. How hard is this? Come on.
Yeah, the haulers have electricity. They don't have internet though.
Well, the problem is the siphoning off of all that money before it gets to the guys with the sleeves.
Yeah.
So got to solve that problem. Now, it's clear that the Goldman Sachs traders are not watching this show regularly, and it has cost them. Because if they had watched this show regularly, they would know that the proper way to do this is with bullet artifacts and Counter-Strike. It's been proven time and time again.
The FBI has indicted Wall Street banker for doing crimes on Xbox 360.
Did he call someone's mom?
One of the transcripts
name.
was, oh, they don't log anything from Xbox chat. It's safe to talk here. It was not, in fact, safe to talk there.
It wasn't. They were caught. So this guy was passing off secrets that he, trading things that he couldn't trade on because of his position. But he gave them to his friends who did trade on them and kicked him back a little cash. And they made a lot of money.
Fun times.
They also did the stupid thing of instead of just investing in a basket of stocks and letting some of them rise or fall as they would, but then knowing they had one winner, they just bought the winners. It's like, that's
That
Elon
looks
Musk.
suspicious. Yeah.
That's Elon Musk level of just baiting the SEC. They're going to respond to that. The slippery slope of digitizing your identity and tracking everything. We talk about that a lot. Some people are just like, nah, you're crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist. It's never going to happen. But, you mentioned the boiling frog. The bottoms of his feet are getting a little warm. He's like, I don't know.
This is a nice little hot tub I find myself in.
I don't know about the liquid temperature, but it seems like something's changing under me.
The UK passport images database could be used to catch shoplifters. You wouldn't think that tiny little image was high enough fidelity to use facial recognition and everything else, but you would be wrong.
Well, but no, based on what we've seen about facial recognition, you would be right. But that's not going to stop them. There are going to be so many false positives from that.
Yeah.
It's the really annoying false positive is like, this says you were at this place at this time, prove that you weren't. And it's just like, wow, I was home alone
Playing
resurfacing
Baldur's
my
Gate for
driveway.
the 100th time.
And if you're one of these people that only gets upset when marginalized groups get victimized and not the people at large, they're also going to use the immigration and asylum biometric system for this. So you can also be upset. And here's an argument that we just keep seeing coming back around. I expect that eventually this will happen because just the repetition and the money that's being poured into it.
Oh, well, that's going to be an excellent segue. But before you get there, here in the U.S., the way that we're running into the same thing that is going to happen in the EU, which will probably happen in the EU if more stuff continues, is like Walgreens and where the theft is so high, they just don't let you into the store in the first place unless you beep in.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
I think eventually we're going to go to like, you only get to spend Walgreens credits. And you only get in if you have a certain amount of Walgreens credits on file.
yeah, I think
You have
that's
to watch a certain number of ads. Otherwise,
European telecom firms urge EU to make a big tech pay. Or not a big tech pay, to make big tech
All
pay.
the
just in
big
general.
techs.
Yeah.
So they say Netflix costs us a lot of money because they have all this traffic. Even though that's creating demand for your product, they should pay us.
And unfortunately, EU lawmakers are probably, I don't know. Some days it seems like they're dumber than ours. Some days it seems like that ours are dumber than theirs. I don't.
Some days it seems like they're all in collusion.
Yeah.
And the EU does do some things against big tech that we refuse to. We got to give them the edge in that one. And they have been going after the targeted advertised tracking. And in certain EU countries now, you can't do that at all. So what is Facebook going to do? That is their entire business model. Well, they say, you're going to pay us one way or the other. You're either going to be the product or you're going to pay for the product.
Meta's Instagram and Facebook to charge EU users for an ad-free service, according to sources. $12 to $14 to $19 a month, US. If you want the full Instagram package, wasn't it like 19? That's just madness. They're making that much money off of somebody's personal data? That doesn't seem possible.
That is wild, isn't it?
Yeah. I would have thought it would be on the order of like $3 a person.
Maybe they're announcing that price so that when people push back against it, they'll be like, all right, it's $4. We hear you.
Well, I was thinking more about the distribution, because that would suggest that there are people that, are on Farmville all day on Facebook and they're making hundreds of dollars a day on those. Whereas, my mom logs in like maybe once a week is like, probably $5.
I don't know. But they also, the UK is coming after the big tech companies because of their cloud computing. They believe that the big companies have a little bit too much of a head start.
Amazon and Microsoft's cloud dominance referred for UK competition probe. I think this competition probe is flawed before it even gets off the ground. This competition probe is based around inability to move between products and to choose the product and the cloud service that you want, which if you want to run Microsoft Exchange for your email, that is obviously not going to work properly on Google Compute. And you can kind of sort of, once upon a time, you could kind of sort of do that in Azure, but anymore, running on-prem, quote-unquote, Exchange in Azure is just asking for trouble. So I think this probe is going to be problematic even before it, because it's conflating two unrelated things.
Well, if you are a EU country that actually goes after big tech and makes some really stringent rules, what you're finding is they're happy to just single you out and change things just for your country. And in some cases, just turn them off.
Google agrees to reform its data terms after German antitrust intervention. Also, why Gmail is not a thing in Germany. It's Google Mail.
And in Germany, you will get some more control over it. They will maybe do less targeted stuff, but only in Germany, not the whole EU. They're good enough now to just single out a single country. And if there's some stuff on the edges, that's the cost of doing business. Russia is famous now for locking things down. They might not want some foreign influence coming into that country and showing some things that might be embarrassing for them. So what do?
Russia plans to try to block VPN services in 2024. So you can't hide what you're doing on the internet?
It's
Great.
really a bummer for me, for someone who follows some Russian artists.
The post via a VPN,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, a lot of them after the whole war started were like, I can post here. Like, if you want to follow me, go over here. And they're probably not even going to be able to post there anymore.
What also is sort of sad that we can infer from this article, but like you might not even think about it, but your brain is already prepared because of how we've lived our lives for the past 3 decades, that this war is going to be going on in 2024 for sure. Like there is no end. We're not expecting an end. We just expect it to go on forever.
We need to skip to the Swan Lake part.
Well, Japan is, like everybody else, scrambling for chips, and they're probably doing the right thing. They are dumping money to bring chip fabs into their country.
Japan to provide 192 billion yen in extra subsidies to Micron. This is probably a good move.
They also gave TSMC something, 92 billion. Just 92 billion.
Just a small.
Well, it's 92 billion
Morsel.
yen, so it's a little different.
And we learned last week that Beijing produced a list of allowed mobile developers or mobile app stores. And there was a name that should have been at the top, starting with A, that was missing from that list. And now we kind of see maybe why they were waiting to get some confirmations.
Apple enforces a new check on apps in China as Beijing tightens its oversight. Oh no!
Do.
I'm getting spammed into oblivion lately. Are you guys getting a lot?
So
I did get one earlier this week where the guy called me back, I guess, and was like, did you just call this number? And I was like, no, sir. And you have to try to explain that.
They're all getting flagged appropriately, but there's just a lot of them.
Yeah, it's the only one I've had recently.
this is you have to have a license now. So if you're an Apple app developer and you want people in China to use your app, you have to apply for a license and then show Apple that you got a license, and then they'll allow your app on the Chinese App Store. Man, if only you could just install your own applications.
You've got the story up already.
Oh no, it's the old UK method.
Yeah.
License everything.
We call it license.
I'm sure we'll get a story soon about how difficult it is to get those licenses if you're a small app developer. Yeah, well, spoiler, you've already seen this one, but we've been following the Worldcoin taking over the world, although they've started with the poorest portions of the world, where people will be most lured into giving away all of their identity for a little bit of cash.
Kenya panel urges shutdown of Worldcoin's crypto project within country. That's the one where it scans your eyes for this, whatever this is. We will give you this glass bead in exchange for
this Coke bottle. So this is not necessarily the government of Kenya saying this. This is a panel that was, investigating it. I don't know if this is going to actually carry any weight in terms of getting it stopped. I imagine Sam Altman is lining some very important pockets, as he's doing all over the world.
Remember the fancy dinner he took all our Congress critters to?
I bet that was some delicious food.
I bet it was.
And RICO, the Racketeering and Corrupt Organizations Act, you don't usually see that used against giant corporations, but it probably should be more often, shouldn't it?
H&R Block, Meta, and Google slap a RICO suit allegedly to scheme to scrape taxpayer data. So this is the tracking pixels that I've always attributed to, well, let's just put a tracking pixel on everything. This suit alleges, no, they knew that was happening and they were collecting that data because they knew it was hugely valuable.
And you were entering very sensitive stuff, financial data, things about, your family or whatever, events that happen to your life that might be tax deductible. And Facebook was getting, on some level, some copy of all of that. So your ad profile was just being fed constantly as you were doing your taxes. That's very valuable to them. I mean, we see it's probably at least a $10 a month valuable, isn't it? Probably more than that.
We don't 100% know that happened, but if this lawsuit proceeds, we will have discovery, and from the discovery, we will know what is in those tables. Because there is an aspect of this that's just the tracking pixel is literally just hoover up whatever somebody types into that table. So it's like, did somebody notice that and then do anything with it after the fact? That's going to be very interesting.
They absolutely. That's their business model.
It sure seems like.
If let's say that you make ice cream for a living, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, there's an underground river of milk under the building. Should we take advantage of that?
No, because it's underground milk. Who knows where it came from?
That's the best milk.
What if it turns out not to be milk, but that's stuff that was in Ghostbusters too?
Oh, we got the plastic ice cream now. Did you read about that?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Vanillin. Well, moving on to the security section, we know what it costs to be cyber attacked. At least in some cases, it is pretty bad.
Clorox shares touch on more than a 5-year low on a financial hit from cyber attack. Even though inflation is sort of crazy, a lot of these companies are also posting record profits. So it is a 5-year low for the stocks, but it doesn't seem to have really. It'll be probably another few months before we know what the profit impact was, but it doesn't seem like it was that bad.
I don't know. I saw on the store shelves it was missing for a while. Big week for Clorox.
The off-brand.
Yeah. And moving on to some various exploits. The first one we have affects ARM.
Vulnerable ARM GPU drivers under active exploitation. Patches may not be available. These are systems that are based around a Mali GPU. They may not properly sanitize anything, and bad, threat actors can use that to do a lot of really terrible things to your system.
And they're probably not going to get a fix out to you anytime soon. Their suggestion was just upgrade
to a new device.
Easy.
There are, it's a wide spectrum of affected devices. Some Android phones, Android devices, car auto computers, a lot of things.
I think the Pixel phones, right?
It's a Pixel 7, Samsung S20 and S21. Yeah.
They're listed.
Not fabulous.
And the big companies continue to get hacked uncontrollably. They don't ever seem to learn from it, or perhaps they just can't stop it.
As a follow-up to last week, PlayStation Sony confirmed that data breach exposed 7,000 employees' personal info. So when the attacker said they had access to everything, Sony was saying, we think it's probably okay. It was not okay. It was in fact not okay. So the attackers may have or have had access to a lot more than they let on.
And the gas pumps are hilariously insecure. We learned that they do everything wirelessly, which is weird because they're usually physically attached to the building. Why not just run a cable and solve this problem?
That takes literally moments of effort.
Also, before we get to the story, another thing I've seen, have you seen they're now, I don't know if it was just fear mongering from local news, but they had pictures where people would drill the contactless payment and destroy it and then put the sniffer on the card. So it's like, you're like, oh, I can't tap. I'll just use this. And the sniffer's there waiting for you. There's a lot of ways they're trying to get you at the gas station.
Detroit man steals 800 gallons using Bluetooth to hack pumps at a gas station. There's an element of subterfuge here, though. There's a Detroit man that is stealing gasoline, but he's enabling others to steal gasoline. So he's stolen some amount of gasoline himself, but of that 800 gallons, most of it are passersby that are using the fact that the pump is no longer charging, or it's charging 1 cent per gallon or something, to then buy gasoline.
I think it might be more of an organized team, kind of like the shoplifting.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think they sort of planned for it.
Well, they interviewed just one rando who was like, I thought something was wrong with the pump. And they were like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. If I were part of an organized gas theft ring. So, yeah, they didn't talk about exactly how it works, obviously, because they didn't want people to repeat it, but it must be pretty easy.
Yeah, they said that this is not a new security issue. It's just that nobody fixed this after the last security issue.
Also, the best thing about it is employees at the gas station caught on to it at some point. I mean, 800 gallons, but they were helpless to stop it. They didn't have any way to stop the pumps.
They had to use the emergency stop, which stops everything. They do have a pump off switch, but somehow they overrode that through their Bluetooth, whatever.
Which is in software. I guess the other one's probably just for fire, right?
Emergency stop, yeah. And it really, like, that shuts everything down.
Probably can't even get some snacks.
It's hard to un-emergency stop after that. So it's a process.
Didn't you just put a sign on the pump, and then the people who ignore it would probably be people who are part of the ring?
It fills the tanks, the big tanks, just full of cat litter.
Yeah, I mean, probably something like that. You never know.
Well, you got to love whenever there's a new exploit when they come up with a fun name for it. It makes it so much more palatable when we can call it something pleasant.
Looney Tunables bug allows root access on Linux devices. There's a Python exploit going around. It's actually a bug in glibc, so it's pretty universal. It's pretty easily exploited. This is bad news for anybody that hasn't rebooted their computer in a while.
Might want to do that. Run some updates. And this is one of the things I'm more terrified of because there's literally no defense against it. And because we live in a militarized police state, you have a very high likelihood of either getting roughed up or possibly killed or your pets getting killed when this type of thing happens.
Hundreds of U.S. schools hit by potentially organized swatting hoaxes, according to this report. So this is a situation where they're creating false active shooter situations at schools, which is taken very seriously because of the volume of school shootings that we have, which then may result in school shootings.
The principal of one of the schools is like, I was surprised how violent the response was. Really? You don't watch the news at all? There were 30 in one day last year.
Wow.
Yeah. And they believe that a big part of this is swatting as a service. So there's online places you can go, pay a little bit of money, and they will organize all of this for you.
Wasn't there something like this similar last year where like one of the schools near us had several threats called in, and it was right before like finals, I think.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, oh, that's why they did that.
Some people also pull fire alarms. And Microsoft may have also been hacked. Let me rephrase that. Was almost surely hacked.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that they won't say we were not hacked.
Microsoft won't say if its products were exploited by spyware zero-day attacks. These are vulnerabilities from libraries that were used in Edge and Teams and Skype and other Microsoft products. Sure does look like that was the delivery vector for malware, and Microsoft got some logs. They're not saying.
So when an intelligence service says we cannot confirm or deny, I mean, you kind of get maybe why they would do that. But a software company, should they have that protection?
Oh man, if only I as an individual could see into what my devices were doing.
No, you don't need that kind of power.
And we often like to talk about the scourge of fake cables. And usually a fake cable is just going to cost you money and give you a bad user experience. It might damage your equipment if it's bad enough, but this takes it to a whole new level.
I tested an HDMI adapter that demands your location, browsing data, photos, and etc., and spams you with ads. So this is one of those Apple smart cables, but it's not from Apple. This is how the Chinese company that made it has figured out a way around Apple stuff. It uses a piece of software to talk to it to do HDMI out. But unfortunately, that software just spams the ever-loving crap out of you. Ugh. It does work as advertised. It's just also borderline malware.
Well, it doesn't work until you go to their website and scan the code and give it access to all of your stuff on your phone. So yeah, you'll be using the HDMI out just fine, but then they will also be looking at everything.
This is the tofu drag of lightning to HDMI adapters.
I like to imagine that no one would they would plug it in and they would see that and be like, that's not right. But I guess it must work on someone.
Not at all. People are used to that cycle of phone product, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Like,
yeah.
oh, I've got a new camera. I guess I need to go and put it online and do the QR code and do the easy setup. Like nobody.
But for a cable?
Well, but I mean, I'm saying, yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah.
But people just don't think about it. They're like, oh, hey, I do
I
this for
guess,
everything
yeah.
that I buy. Internet of Things. Why not cables? The Internet of Cables. And this isn't quite security, although I wonder if there's a security problem that was hidden That's
Maybe.
the result of all of this, because how else do you explain it?
The Guardian headline is travel website booking.com leaves hoteliers out of thousands of dollars of payments that they're owed. So for some reason, and booking.com's not saying why, they're just not paying for rooms booked through their site.
And for whatever reason, this is only in Thailand, Indonesia, and parts of Europe. So the way it works is if you go to booking.com and you pay, booking.com takes your money. Then they pass on, minus commission, that money to the hotel. Later, probably at the end of the month. They're just not doing it anymore.
It seems weird.
Seems like a good way to kill your business.
And the hotels will let you check in anyway because they still want the money from booking.com, but
Yeah. But and they also want the exposure of booking.com, right? I mean, this would be the equivalent of YouTube is not giving us money, but then they're just like, well, where are you going to go? What are you going to do about it?
I love how, because everybody always tells Dave Jones to post his stuff on other places, and he does, the EEV blog, but there's only like 4 views on those places. So it's just like,
Doesn't really catch on. I don't know. Rumble's kind of threatening them in some cases, but it's not even close.
Twitch was supposed to allow you to upload videos, but I don't know anybody who uses that feature.
that was one of the places where Dave posted, he's like, I've got the largest channel on Rumble, which is 2,000 views a month or something. And it's like, oh.
Rip.
Well, that's rip for this episode of the Level 1 show.
We'll see you next time. Tomorrow we've got business and what?
Business, and we just did security. Social, I guess.
All business tomorrow is basically collapse.
It's bad news, but a happy fall, everybody.
Oh,
Enjoy.
the weather is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it
the
is.
cost of butter is up 75%. Would that we could do anything about it.
Just gonna have to have your cider. Anyway, we'll see you guys then. Bye.